From the great halls of their house, there are assembled three who hope to one day be the world's greatest driving heroes. Created from the cosmic legends of the universe comes our team captain, the Vision, Bill Fisher, and their soon-to-be Wonder Woman, Vicky Fisher, and our Captain Marvel and head flight trainee, Jennifer Scripchuk. Their mission: to fight injustice, share what is right and wrong, to get you out of your house and come out racing with them and serve all mankind. They are the Garage Heroes in Training Team. Dominating with Dawson.
All right, Ben, we're back again. I want to talk. We have, as you know, we broke one car, and we really, really broke one car. So we now have two cars that we need to fix and repair and replace. And you know what I want?
Right.
I want this one to be the one. I want this to be the perfect car. I want it to do everything. I want it to be fast. I want it to be able to turn, cheap to run, never break down, and tows itself to the track. Ben, what do I got to get?
I mean, the literal answer almost it ticks off every box you just said. It was my Miata that I had as a street car that I built into a track car that I built into a race car. Like, even when it was a full race car with a cage, I would tow my tire trailer to the track with it. Hardly ever anything would break. Like, it was just so easy and cheap to run. So there's the whole point of us talking about this is there's no perfect secret weapon, but a Miata is a great start.
But I want the perfect one. I want it to be
Right.
everything.
Well, I mean, Ben. I mean, the E36 is a perfect car. The Miata is a perfect car. The Honda is a perfect car. The Porsche,
You know what I have noticed?
perfect car.
You
And
know
they're
what-
all in my garage.
I gotta have the perfect car to go to the track day, and I'm just not sure I have it.
you know what?
That's
you know
also
what-
part of it.
You know what I noticed? The perfect car, the answer to what is the perfect car is always the car that person's driving.
That's right. What is sitting in your driveway? What is parked
Exactly.
outside where you're sleeping right now? Drive that thing to the track.
That's the perfect car. Just go.
Here's what I've learned
Uh-oh.
is that, yes, there are all good cars, but it all comes down to the driver.
Most of it does, yeah.
I mean, you could put a great driver behind a crappy wheel, and he'll still rank.
Yeah.
As Ben's pointing to himself.
That's right.
It has happened.
Ben could
Yes.
rank in a shopping cart.
Oh, we know he cheats in Pinewood Derby, so shopping cart's
Yeah.
easy.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so I think, I mean, and in some cases, when you're thinking about race cars, especially if you're thinking about a race car for an endurance team, a lot of things come into play to find the perfect car. Like, what is your, what your team's budget is, how heavy do you want to be on consumables during a race weekend? It's like what you think is cool. Like, a lot of Lemons teams, I think they end up just racing the coolest, weirdest thing they can think of. So sometimes that decision of what the perfect car is going to be like, what's going to get me the most laughs as I roll through the judges box. Like, sometimes that dictates everybody's entire build or their theme.
The IOE car.
Yeah, so I mean, but that's never been anything that's interested me. But it's a huge part of what Lemons is, and I love that aspect of Lemons too. Like, I dig that. It's just not my thing. Which is also just a side point. That's a great thing about Lemons. You can be somebody who wants to race, somebody who wants to do the art. There is something for everybody in a Lemons race that you're going to dig and get into. So go do that. But also, just in general, I think if you're trying to choose a car for an event or to run with a series or run with multiple series, there are a lot of factors that go into it. So that's something that you and your team have to just decide. Like, what do you want to work on? What do you feel comfortable trying to do engineering on? Would you guys agree with that?
I think I do. I think the biggest issue we've had as a team is we have lots of one-off cars and nothing in common with each other, and that makes it hard from a spares control and learning the car perspective. And so we're trying to simplify now. A couple of years too late, but whatever.
Right. When our team first started, we had the 96 Miata, and we were running the E30 that we still have, and there wasn't much that we could do in between them, but we were able to run like a common set of wheels and tires. So that was at least one kind of big thing we had out of the way that the two cars could share. But you're right, it would have been nice to be running two of the same car. And it's something we knew how to work on. We had to learn as we went in the E30. But when we started talking about this, I was also thinking about people who choose a car for a track day, and what kind of thing that will get them out of the house to go do it. So I think a lot of people just don't realize that they could go take, their whatever car they drive to work, as long as it's not a lifted truck or a big truck or something like that. And I think even a minivan you can take to a track day. You just want to put good brake fluid in and go see what's going on. Take your street tires. You're not likely to even burn off your street tires, I wouldn't think. No. If it's your first track day, I think just go have fun. So but that's the answer. And a lot of times, I hate to even say this, but a lot of times as I instruct, I look around and you'll hear instructors like, I can't believe that guy brought this to the track or whatever. But I mean, I just look back to my own experience when I got that Miata to the track the first time. I'm sure somebody looked at that car and thought, like, look at this goofy white Miata with a red top. Like, what is this guy doing? But it was a huge realization of a dream for me to get to a track event and actually get my car on track. So I think it's the worst thing in the world for the sport when I hear, people at the track, instructors or other people just, taking a poop on what somebody else brought to the track. I think when I see somebody get to the track, even if it's a car that I wouldn't have chosen, or I think he's kind of goofy myself, might not have made the personal choice. I'm happy for that person that got to the track. It's a big deal to get to your first track day, I think. So.
Sure. I actually had I think it was a 3/4 ton, but it might have been a 1/2 ton pickup truck was in our HPD group.
Excellent.
And it was fun. I was looking at it going, you are not lacking for engine. Turning was a challenge, but the engine was fine.
Yeah. But, turning and slowing down takes a little extra time, and it gets up, right? Yeah,
I don't want to pay for your brakes, but man, it was good. And one thing, just to add to is typically we aren't going to have anywhere near the fastest car when we go to an HPD because we use Miatas and 86s most likely, but we're not the slowest, but we're towards the slow side. There's usually, one or two slower, but you'd be amazed at some of the cars that we're able to pass as we get better.
Oh yeah.
So
you're preaching to the Pope.
You don't need your $250,000 supercar to go to an HPD 1.
That's
no.
Right. And please don't bring your slicks to HPD 1. That would be.
And the Miatas are really fun to drive on the tracks. They really are.
Oh yeah, they're a pip. So much fun.
Because they just hug the corners.
They do.
That's right.
They do.
Well, I say whatever you got. There's no perfect car. Get on out there. If you and your buddies want to get a car, just get something you can all agree on and get after it.
Absolutely. There's no better time to start than today. And second to today is tomorrow. And there's no more important turn than the next one.
That's right.
Keep it going. So Ben, after we say goodbye, are you going to tell me what the perfect car is that I need to get? Because we need to buy a car.
He's already yelling Miata.
I got you guys. Don't worry.
All right. Very well.
Pinto.
Oh, no Pinto.
Oh, I know these sisters have a love with the Pintos.
No.
We're going to K-swap a Pinto.
Yes.
I would drive a Pinto. I would not race a Pinto.
Pinto rally car?
Nope.
What about rear engine, and then we move the problematic fuel system to the front?
Hayabusa.
I would.
Yeah, Hayabusa. Excellent.
I would. It would be bad trying to find parts for, though.
If we replace enough parts, it won't be a Pinto except for the sheet metal. So that'll be fine.
They'll be like, let's put a Camaro in it.
That's right. That's right.
Well, it sounds like we got it all figured out now.
All right. There's the perfect car. You guys got the answers. Thank you, Ben.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you.
Hi, Ben. I keep hearing this term that's kind of kicking around called throttle steering. I have no idea what that is. Can you explain that out to us?
It's not something I really think about that much either. I hear the term too, but I think people mean just to say that, there can sort of like you got the car already turned, I guess, or you already got your radius set, and you're just going to kick the throttle in a certain way to make the car turn. I think it's sort of, people say drive with your feet, that's part of it. What do you think, Bill?
Well, I mean, I've heard the you slow down with the steering wheel and you turn with the gas pedal is where I hear throttle.
Yeah, you could definitely influence the rotation of the car with the throttle pedal. So you may be already doing all the other stuff that you would normally be doing in a turn, but when it's, you need a little bit of extra rotation, the car will kick out as you apply the throttle. So you do throttle steer, I guess. So that's what that is. It's sort of like trail braking for me. It's not one of these things that I consciously think about while I'm driving, but I'm sure I'm doing it. But it's not like, I just throttle steered through Oak Tree. But I know that's a thing people talk about.
How did I know we'd be at VIR before this was done? So
it's an hour away. What am I going to do?
I know.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of story time. So I was at the NASA HPD a couple weeks back, and we changed a little bit of the setup in the car. Now the car used to have a staggered tire setup where the front was 215 and the back was 225. We changed the tires to where it was 225 front, 225 back, and the car was what I don't know that I'm right, but I would say the car was neutral. It didn't understeer or oversteer. And in this instance, that's where I started thinking in this one turn that's 180 degrees. It's called Keyhole at Mid-Ohio.
Yeah.
I felt like I was throttle steering around that turn, because if I wanted to turn tighter, I'd come off the gas a little bit. If I wanted to turn a little looser, I'd come on to the gas. And then I really, thinking about it, I didn't consciously know, but I really think my steering wheel input was almost straight for the back half of that turn.
I think that's what I was sort of guessing at. What we're talking about is you kind of you're in a turn, you're already doing the things you think you need to be doing to turn, but you want to influence the way the car pulls into the turn. Like Bill said, you can come out of the throttle a little more maybe, and sometimes you'll feel the car suck right down at the apex a little bit better, or maybe it'll take a tighter radius if you just let off the throttle. But if you want to bend it out or push it a little bit wider, you can definitely stay with more throttle. So is that what you're talking about, Bill?
Just kind of. If I wanted a little more, let's call it a fade to the track out, I would just push the throttle a little more. And if I was going too far, I'd just not go on quite as early or not go on quite as aggressively. And that was, to me, essentially, I wasn't using the steering wheel, so I was steering with the throttle. So to me, that's throttle steer. But
and when you think of it in terms like that, it sounds like something that's a great tool to have in your toolkit for traffic. Because, you may be in traffic and you're in there like, I'm trying to go in here 2 or 3 wide. I don't know if I let off a little more, not having to give up too much else, it'll put me in position to get inside this other car or something like that. So I think if you think of this in terms of a good tool to have in your toolbox and a good thing to understand, like, all right, how does the car react when I just, blast a little more throttle through here? Is it going to push me out a little bit wider? These are good things to understand, but also important to understand is that for your car, there is still an ideal approach, all by yourself fast lap that shouldn't come down to whether or not you're throttle steering. Because our ideal is that we use every geometrical advantage when we're all by ourselves. So we're all the way at all the way to the far one extreme of the track before we turn in. We turn in all the way down to the apex every time. And then we track out using every bit. And we don't drive out to the track out point. We're not like steering our way out there. We're doing it fast enough that the car is forced out there. You don't have any choice but to have your outside tires hitting the exit curve. So that's your result when you're driving right. Like when you're driving a good time trial lap all by yourself. So there is an ideal approach. But then there's also an approach where, tools like throttle steer, stuff like that may come in, due to different track condition factors or traffic. But I wouldn't say, typically there's an ideal way to do it. You should also be aware of what your ideal is too. But does that make sense?
I think so. Jen, do you ever feel the difference in your steering response with the gas pedal at different places, or have you noticed that yet?
It's a good question.
No, I'm only driven the truck, really. So no, I haven't really felt too much of a difference.
Okay,
let's get Jen in the E36.
Well, we want
he
to,
keeps
but
trying to.
She's scared to go in. We'll get her in
The
there.
last time the steering was a bit difficult on the truck.
Yeah, well, it didn't have any, so we'll get you out of there.
That was a problem.
Well, I think coming up at this next HPE we go to, that would be something I'd like you to pay attention to, is that see how the car turns through the curve, and then as later in the session, maybe, or later in the day, or later in the weekend, see how it turns with a little more gas or a little less gas, and you'll notice the difference. I think
Yeah,
it's
sure.
something. I think you're right at the cusp of the transition between all your tires just go in a nice smooth line to where you actually push the car a little bit and get a little bit of that slip angle and a little bit of that slip, and it's going to be the first time it's going to be a little scary, but you're going to get off the track and you're going to have a big old smile.
But you don't want slip, right?
You do.
Okay.
They want us to slide around that corner with the back end squealing.
A little
But
bit.
isn't that drifting? And you said no drifting.
Let me step in here, folks.
Yeah.
What, is this your segment or something?
Where things get a little
I'm
weird. I just want anybody to
confused.
leave here with any misconceptions. So what we're doing when we're doing performance driving or racing is that we want to use every bit of the available grip that the car has. So if I see a driver driving and I never hear a chirp out of their tires, I know that they're probably driving comfortably, but they're not using every bit of the grip that the car has. A happy car, a car that's being used completely, you're going to hear the tires chirp. You hear, a chirping tire. I've always heard this from the old track people. A chirping tire is a happy tire. A screaming tire is not good. So, if your tires are just screaming the whole time, the whole way around the corner, you're doing something wrong. You're definitely not going to be fast. But if you hear like that kind of thing as you're going around, that means that somebody's probably using every bit of that tire just to the very edge, and the little chirp you hear is the driver stepping a little bit over the edge. But if I hear somebody talking about how fast am I going, and I go watch their video and I never hear anything out of their tires, I know that they're not going as fast as they can.
Oh, so that takes away my floating around the track scenario.
Correct. You keep saying that, and I keep letting you go.
Yeah, I was just going to let you have that one, but that's not a thing.
That's not a thing. Okay, that's just me being happy going fast.
Yeah, I mean, and hey, learning how to get comfortable.
And your
with
ass happy truck.
So if you look at a graph of the coefficient of friction, you'll see that it goes up until it starts to slide just a little bit, and that's when the tires will start to make a little bit of noise.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's this term called stiction, which then means stiction, which is different than friction. And since the tires are soft and squishy, and the road is not perfectly smooth, you get a mechanical interlock of the two. So you actually, once you start to slide, you get a little more grip to a point. And then for each tire, there's a point where that just falls off. And when it falls off, you start to slide. But you want to be right in that little window. And that's when the tire will start to chirp and talk. But you don't want to be a little flat spot in the tires.
Wait a minute. Now, you just tell me I need to have a little bit of skid in my back end. Oh.
No. All.
Oh,
Wait a minute. Skid in the back end of the truck.
Yo.
Thank you. Back end of the
over here.
How am I editing this podcast?
Wasn't there just...
Are you trying to kill my edit?
Wasn't there just a segment that we just had when you wanted me to drift a little bit around the corner?
And I just said it again. Just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
But not drift, slide. A little bit of slip.
We're not talking about like Tokyo Drift like the movies or anything. We're just saying you do want to slip a little bit because also that does get your tires heated up and they do grab the track a little bit better if you're gripping. I didn't know that. I did not know about stiction until today. It's cool. Also, if we're talking about sliding and stuff like that, something to pay attention to when you're choosing your tires. I mean, obviously you guys are running the RS4s, which is kind of universally good, and a tire doesn't have any really bad properties. But a couple years from now, you probably have to choose a new compound when that one phases out. But one thing to pay attention to, and this has always been the way for me, is there go read reviews and go listen to what people say that seem credible tire. If somebody says, hey, this tire and it's legal for your class has great properties, but once it lets go, it doesn't give you any warning. You're just off the track. They're really, that you see that type of review, and if you see it enough times, skip that tire and go to some other tire where nobody's saying that about it. Because there are genuinely some tires that, through whatever reason, they let go faster. It's just they just drop off immediately as soon as you start to slide them. Or there may be other information that's useful in reviews. So like, oh, these are good, but they get greasy after they get hot, something like that. But I think it's always worth giving a little bit of time to go read about a tire before you buy one.
So that's one thing that I think I've talked to a few people, and they say that we drive on DOT tires with most of our races and our HPDs.
Right.
If you go to a true racing slick, the difference between a little bit of noise and I just let go is like really, really, really narrow, and ours are kind of wide, so a little bit more.
But even within those, some are worse than others.
Right,
so,
right.
From my experience with our compound tires, which are still a DOT tire, something like that, there's still usually a few choices out there where they'll give you different results as far as the way they break away.
Right. So there's the breakaway at the limit, and then there's the degradation with time. And we tend to, on our team, like the widest window and the longest stable period. We're willing to give up the fastest top 5, 10 laps or 20 laps. It doesn't matter. We're more worried about, for our team at our level, consistency.
The only RS4 we've ever actually had to pull off the car because it was worn out because one part of it was completely flat.
A flat
I'm not sure we've ever actually worn one out.
They just go. Hankook should totally sponsor us.
Yeah, no kidding. Where you at?
That's right. All right. Any other questions? We good? We're good. Thank you, sir.
Dominating with Dawson.
So, Ben, we've got jargon. We've got jargon everywhere. I hear people talking about understeer. What does understeer mean to you?
Well, we just recently talked about rotation. So understeer is an under rotation. You throw an input at the car with the steering wheel, and you expect it to do this amount of turning. I turn the wheel this much. I expect it to turn this much. That means the car didn't turn as much as you expected. It means the front wheels are turned, but they are just not giving you the angle that you should when you turn. So it means that they're it's pushing. People call it a push. People call it understeer.
Plowing. Yeah.
Yeah, so you turn and you just don't get the results you expected. So a lot of times it has to do with how your car is set up, or just in general, if you run into turn one at VR with a school bus, it's going to push. So
if more predominant in front wheel drive, rear wheel drive, or
it's more predominant in front wheel drive. There's there are ways to address it with your suspension setup.
Okay.
I've always had rear wheel drive cars. Not the Miata I raced and tracked and drove on the street for years and years. That car was terminally understeer car. Right around by the time I sold it, I had it pretty well balanced, but I never got it. I would prefer a car that's oversteering a little bit. I can never get quite enough with that car. We finally, with our E30 race car, our endurance car, it is finally oversteering enough. It's not scary oversteering, but we've got a welded diff in there. It's a welded 410, so that thing will really come up off the corner like a scalded dog, and it's kind of fun.
All right, so for Pete at home, he's using a analogy. He's not talking actually, so don't.
That's
write
correct.
into
No actual scalded dogs.
Yes, and if your car is understeering, is there a way? There's probably two ways, right? You could probably adjust the setup of the car, or you could adjust your driving. So let's put setup on this side. Is there a way to adjust your driving to minimize or deal with understeer?
Sure. The easiest thing to try is if I've been hammering away this corner the same way over and over again, and I'm not getting the turn in, I'm just going to try something different. So first thing I would try would be backing at the brake zone. So if I'm braking at the 3 and I can barely get turned for the corner, and the car's just pushing all the way through, it might mean I'm asking more of what the front tires and the front brakes and the whole car can do, trying to get through there. So maybe I need to back it up a little bit. So a lot of times I've definitely faced understeer in several different kinds of platforms, racing different cars, and you just have to change something. But a lot of times the easiest thing to change is braking a little bit earlier, turning in a little bit differently, maybe waiting a little later to turn in and throw a bunch of angle at it. Whatever you were doing is not working. So try something different. But those are try changing one thing at a time about your approach and see how it goes.
So it's not always the car. Sometimes it's the guy behind the wheel.
Oh yeah. I mean, you could just definitely be not. You might be a new car to you or whatever, but if you're not feeling it, I drove the Knox Vegas Lowballers Hoopty Corn. That's that Contour with a first gen Mustang body welded onto it. It's a front drive car. It's got plenty of power and it had a pretty nice diff in there. But still, it took me a while to kind of get used to how it wanted to yank me up off the corner, and I just had to kind of keep adjusting inputs until I kind of got to where it was working the way I wanted to, and I was out there I was able to get faster and faster, and I think I was the fastest car on the track until it suddenly wasn't.
Oh, that happens. I'm usually the fastest car on the track until somebody else goes on the track. So.
There you go.
All right, sir. Thank you.
Dominating with Dawson.
All right, Ben. I know that you're probably going to fall onto the side of the pool with me on this one. When I'm on the street, I try to take advantage of every, when I have time and I'm not, thinking about work or something else, I try and use that as something I can practice for. So I'm constantly making sure that I am looking as far down the road as I possibly can, as much around the corner as I possibly can.
Yeah.
So that I can see a little more, because I find that if I can see further, my track driving gets smoother, my turns link together better, things like that. When you're on the track, when you're looking out the window, it may not necessarily be the windshield when you're going around a turn. It may be a different window. What do you think about looking what they say is looking through the turn? What are you looking at? What are you thinking about when you're turning on a racetrack?
I'm always trying to look as far ahead as I can and be planning for what I'm doing. Because I think if you're looking, if you're negotiating a turn and you're looking at what's right in front of your car, or trying to think, where am I going to be on this curve? Where am I going to land on the curve? Even the next curve, you're probably a little bit behind. Like those are decisions that should have been made a little further up track. But I'm always trying to look further ahead than what I'm actually doing with my hands right then. So I'm making a plan for what I'm going to do next when I get to that corner, with like how my car is going to be placed. So yeah, that involves looking through the corner and seeing what you can see. Sometimes when we talk about looking through the corner, it's not a matter of like, well, I can't see every single thing through this corner because there's trees and a flag stand, so I'm not going to try. I mean, I'm still going to try to assimilate some information, even if I'm looking through several obstructions. If I can see some track further up, I'm still going to try to gather as much information as I can. So I'm always trying to just sort of glean as much information as I can about what's happening. I'm looking ahead for flags. I'm looking ahead for disabled vehicles. I'm looking ahead for slow cars that are going to fall under my wheels soon enough, that sort of thing.
What about if there's a car in front of you and you're going through a turn? What are you looking at then?
Absolutely. I'm not looking at that car. I mean, I'll look at that car if it gets really close to me really quick, but for the most part, I'm trying to look past that car and get an idea how I'm going to get around them.
So are you looking through the windows, or are you looking through around the side, or are you?
Oh, so you mean specifically not looking out my own windshield, but how often am I looking through somebody else's car? I mean, yeah, I'm looking through. If I can see, especially if you're 3 wide or something like that, I've definitely looked through one car to see another car. But yeah, you're looking through anything I can see that's transparent. It's going to let me see another section of the track, whether it's through another competitor's side window or front or back window, whatever I can do to try to get some information visually. I'm going to take it.
More is better.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, I'm always trying to put together a visual picture of what's happening around me. Have you seen the video of I think it's Nico Hulkenberg? It was an iCam. He's a Formula One driver, and it was a video of him driving on track and how many reference points per second his eyes pick up. Like it was a camera that could track his eye movements. And,
I have not, but we'll have a link on this episode.
Yeah, so a Formula One driver compared to you or any other mortal, like they pick up so many more visual data points per second than we do, and that's one of the reasons that they are so good. So I don't do a lot of training at the track, but one thing I'm constantly training on is my vision. I'm always trying to keep my eyes looking way down track, reminding myself to be thinking way ahead. And also I'm trying to assimilate, as you're driving up a section of track, you got to assimilate the flag stand, the track condition, cars around you. I mean, there's 4 or 5 different things you're picking up all the time, whether you realize it or not. And even if it's empty space, even if you're registering as zero, like 0 tracks, 0 flags, that's still a data point you had to go pick up, right?
Right.
So it all comes together into a big visual picture, and a huge part of that is looking way down track, and I think it's something you constantly have to maintain. There are some other things in driving that become pretty sad, sort of like riding a bike, but vision is something that requires constant work and constant effort.
What about you, Jen? How's your track vision? Is it something you're working on, or?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that that's a really big issue for me. Like, I don't feel like I have a big problem with that. I guess the only time that I felt it was a little, it was just confusing because it wasn't, I guess, natural, was when we did the lead follow, because that was a little tough to try and focus on the instructor and what they were doing and still trying, you know what I mean? So it was just a conflicting thing. But generally, I don't think I have too much trouble with that. I mean, certainly it could always be better, but
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not on your top 3 of things to work on right now, but
no, not on one of the things. I feel like there's other things that, you know, I could work on, but it really is important. Like, I feel like it makes a big difference in how you, even when you're around other cars, like, it kind of takes that, I don't know how to describe it. Like, you don't get
surprised.
As worried, I guess. Yeah. Like, it just is. Like, you know where you're going.
Yeah. I always
It's
play a
almost like
game.
it's automatic. The car just does it. So
I always play a game when I'm in traffic. I want to constantly be able to answer if somebody quizzed me, like, who's where and how many are there, and I have to know who's around me, especially, you know, behind me, to the right, to the left. Didn't you do a drill at the last HPDE where they drew a line on your windshield? Was that helpful?
no, I mean, not really too much. Only because for that particular HPD, it was lead follow, and it really didn't matter because you're really still trying to look at the instructor and then trying to look up at the same time. Whereas generally you really wouldn't be doing that. Like, if you were racing, you wouldn't be so focused on the person directly in front of you and trying to see what they were doing. It's more of a looking at everything.
What was the intent of the line? Where was the line, and what was it supposed to do?
It was just to force you to look up, like to look down the track. So it was kind of like the middle or upper third, of your windshield. So
Right.
like, don't look below this line. But it was kind of hard not to, because if you were close enough to the instructor, like, it was right there. Like, you were really trying to focus on what they were doing, because they were like pointing of, this is where your wheels should hit, and you know what I mean. So it was just kind of a conflicting thing. But generally, it's
I'm not here to
it is very, very important.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not here to poop on anybody's training methodology, but that sounds like something that wouldn't work to me. I mean, it sounds like something like, hey, I had a great idea, guys. Why don't we draw a line in the windshield? It's going to totally get everybody to look up. It's not going to distract them. It's going to work in every application.
It just didn't work with lead follow at all.
Yeah. I mean, I understand what the theory was behind it. It was just because it was a visual thing for you to like keep in mind, because you can tell somebody to look up, but this kind of like, this is a visual. This is where you need to be. Your eyes need to be. But but in that case, and that'll change. I mean, I don't know if they'll do lead follow forever or if they'll incorporate it somehow. But I mean, it for all of the lead follow that we were doing on those HPDs, it wasn't very helpful to do it. But yeah.
Vicki, when you're going around a turn, what are you looking at?
Landmarks. I'm looking at landmarks further down to try to figure out how my exit is going to land, where my turn in, where my exit is. And I don't do that looking down at the track. I have to keep reminding myself not to focus by what's just in front of me. Sometimes I'll make sure that I kind of nail the apex. But for me, I have to constantly remind myself to look further down the road.
So you look at the apex when you're going by to see if you got it? Please say no. Please say no.
Sometimes I make sure that I'm just kind of like in it going, no. Okay, good. And then I'm looking up. But I have to keep reminding myself not to do that. So I keep transitioning back and forth still. Because I already know. See, these are the things that I already know, that once I've done the apex, once I've initiated the entry, it's done.
Yeah.
It really is done. I need to look up, but I'm trying to get my brain to tell my hands and my eyes to do that is different. You know, so it's track time that is going to get me to do that.
Yep. Seat time is what seat time and practice and just time on track.
You know what? Seat time is going to be the biggest thing that we're missing right now this year is just that, like steady seat time.
You guys have already done like 60 E's this year.
Yeah, but the thing is you only get 20 minutes on track every time you're out there. I mean, you can't nail anything until you sit for 2 hours behind a seat on a racetrack.
And practice what you learned. Like
exactly.
It's very specific.
I think you can. I think we've had the experience and a luxury of you go to an HPD and then you go to a race or two,
right?
Where you get 4 or 5 hours,
and
that's what you're used to. So now you're feeling like I had no seat time. There's people who haven't raced all year. So I mean, this COVID thing's kind of cramping everybody's style in multiple ways. So
I think we gotta find you guys another track organization that gets nice longer track sessions. It sounds like Vicky, when you go to the track, I know you folks are running a lot of NASA events where you don't get very long track sessions, but are there organizations where you can kind of get out there and have a little more protracted track sessions where you get a little more time to hit that corner 4 or 5 more times before you come in. So I think there might be a happy medium as far as a DE group that you could find that gets you out on track for a little bit longer, still has good classroom information, but maybe a little bit less going on during the weekend.
Yeah.
We could definitely do something. So let's play the I'm coming to a turn game. It's brand new. I don't think it's going to get very good ratings on TV. So Vicky, you're going down a straightaway. Coming to a right-hand turn. What are you looking at?
Coming into a right-hand turn right now.
You're on a straightaway.
I'm actually looking at how I'm going to enter into it, where my apex point is, and then I'm looking where I need to end up on the other end.
Okay, you're coming up onto the braking zone. What are you looking at?
I'm looking at my marker where I have to stop, or where the marker where I actually have to have my vehicle make that final stop point or slow point.
So your brake on point or your brake off point or your turning point? Which one are you talking about?
I am looking at my end result.
So you're turning in point.
So if I know that I'm going to be turning in, I am going to be braking at the 3 or 2. I'm going to start there to where I need to brake in a straight line before I make my turn.
Okay, you touch the brakes. What are you looking at?
I touch the brakes. I am looking at where I'm looking at my apex where I'm turning in.
Okay, you're starting to come off the brake. What are you looking at?
Starting to come off the brake. Starting to come off the brake, and I'm applying the gas. I'm looking at where
you're starting to come off the brake. You haven't applied gas yet. You haven't turned yet.
Oh, I haven't turned yet.
No, you're starting to come off the brake.
I'm looking at where I want to end up.
The apex or the out?
I'm looking at the apex first.
Okay.
And then, go ahead.
And then what do you do when you start to turn? What are you looking at?
Where my end point is.
Your track out point?
Yes, I'm looking at my far off landmark.
Okay.
Where I need to have the nose of that car heading.
And at the apex, what are you looking at?
My next turn.
Your next turn?
Okay. Or I'm looking at my total track out. I'm still looking at that landmark.
You're down track. Okay.
Yeah, I'm looking at down track.
Okay.
My terminology is really bad, which is another one we have to just do conversations on.
That's true. I think everybody knows this by now.
Yes.
So no shock to anyone. Jennifer, do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that it's that automatic for me, but I just know that I'm always looking where I want the car to be.
To go?
Like, to go, where I want it to go, because I just find it just does it if you're looking there. Do you know what I mean? Like, as soon as you you're looking at where you want to stop, whether it's 2 or 3 or whatever. But like, as soon as you like get that visual, you're thinking about the next thing, like, and then you're turning, like, and then where you want it to get. Like, it's not even like you're focusing on the pavement. It's just out.
Right. So Ben was a bobblehead. Sometimes he was a happy bobblehead, and sometimes he was a sad bobblehead during that last discussion. So Ben, what are you thinking about when you're coming to a turn? Where do you think we should be looking?
Some of that sad bobblehead was just me watching my toddler still freaking out at like 10 o'clock on the baby monitor. So that's I think you guys are making a lot of good points. I think it's important to check in as you're going into the turn. You have visual references, and it's track dependent. It's dependent on the corner. It's dependent on who you're running with. But yeah, I mean, I think ideally you're looking way up the track aside from the stuff that's happening right next to you, the apex or the track app that you're doing. You're looking down track to if you can see the next corner. I'm always looking to see, looking as far away as I can, but I'm not referencing what's happening right next to me or what's happening in the right in front of the car. That stuff is all stuff that should be in the past, and you're looking way down track. And I think one thing that people can do that might be a little more productive than the windshield line is just make yourself a big sticky note or some kind of piece of paper or vinyl sign or something like that. You can put somewhere like on your steering wheel, big enough letters, or on your dashboard that just says "eyes up" or "look up" or "look down the track," or whatever way you hear it in your mind that needs to remind you to go look down the track. But people will paste track maps inside their car, little messages to themselves. Like when I raced Blake Field's S10 at Road Atlanta in Lemons, he had a huge thing across the roll bar padding that said "no flags," and I ignored that and got a couple of yellow flags that I had to go talk about. One, my fault. Not my fault. Anyway, but yeah, so put a visual reminder in there to remind yourself. Eyes up is one that I would stick in the car sometimes, just to say like, hey, remember to look way down track as far as you can, because like I said, vision is something that people endeavor to improve and continue to work on forever. Like even guys who you would consider masters at racing will still talk about trying to you see my video talking about, hey, I'm always working on my vision. So that's important.
And even if you go back to like being a 16-year-old kid, a new driver, and all of a sudden you find yourself like going through a construction area at a relatively okay speed, and you got these concrete barriers on either side of you, you know what I mean? Like, it's a very narrow thing. If you're so focused on, as a very new driver, you tend to be very focused on those two things and not hitting them and keeping the car right in the middle. Whereas if you just look up and look down the road, the car will just go. Do you know what I mean? And I mean, not that it's so normal if you've been driving on the road for so long like we have, but like if even just think back, like when you first started driving, like it just, that difference where, you're going through an area like that, and it was just so nerve-wracking because you were trying to just stay right in the middle. Do you know what I mean? You're focused like right in the middle.
You get lost in the detail.
Right. Yeah. Like if you just look up and look down the road, the car will go and you're not going to hit it.
Right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. You have to kind of be able to see the forest for the trees. And if you get down in the trees, like, I got to hit this apex. Like, I just missed an apex by 5 inches and I'm agonizing over this thing I'm doing right this second. You're already going to be behind for the thing you should have already been planning or executing next. So it's important for me to keep that mindset of like, I botched that. That is not right. I'm going to get that next time, but I'm not going to be thinking, you have to just give it up. Like once it's done and not right or great, whatever it is, whatever the result is, you have to accept the result of what happened and already be working on the next element of the course that you're trying to compete on. So, or just trying to drive on. But in my opinion, you just have to always be rapid fire. Like, all right, I'm going to take that loss, or I'm going to take that thing I just learned, apply it on the next time around. But there's no making up time on a road course if you lost some. So just go ahead and take the loss if you botch something and figure out what you're going to do next time. But yeah, it's all in the past. Like everything you're doing, you got to be planning for the next thing down the road, looking way down the road.
Okay, so 2 requests for my fellow drivers on the Garage Heroes and Training team. 1, next time we do the NASA Great Lakes in your HPDE class, John goes over a prescription of what you could do and probably should do visually through every turn.
That's cool.
And it's not written in stone, you got to do it, but it's kind of a, this would be ideal. Anything better would be even better, but at least try and get to this. And then when you're having your out lap or your in lap or your cool down lap, try to do it. Take advantage. You're on the track. You're going slower. You're letting the car cool down. Try to do exactly that, and you'll be amazed at how much better it is, how much more natural it is, and how much more you see.
That's a great point. I want to just piggyback on that, on what you're saying, that when you can do stuff productive on an on the in lap at a DE session when things have slowed down, or even if you're in traffic behind somebody slow. A lot of times, if I'm in the car with a student and I've been trying to get something across, like, all right, let's try this, it hasn't clicked yet. Sometimes when the pace gets slack, like you're behind a slower car, then you're not going to get a pass for a little while. You're not going to get to a passing zone. So you have a few sets of turns you can work on while you're behind a slower car, or just if you're coming in on the last lap. That's the time for me to with that student to say, all right, look, we haven't been able to get this, but now that we're kind of doing it slow motion, let's break it down and really work through this particular section. So sometimes even though you're going slow, if you're stuck behind a slow car, or you're just, it's the end of the session, there's no more green, but you still have to ride all the way back around to the pits, it's a great time to work on some minutia and some detail and stuff you're trying to pick up at full speed, and you're at kind of a partial pace.
Okie dokie. Sounds like
it.
sounds like we got some vision to do.
Yeah, vision board. Make a vision board.
That's right. I can see improvement from here.
That's right. So can I, guys. So can I.
Only if I'm looking for it, though.
Wah, wah.
On our next Dad Jokes with Dawson. Oh, sorry.
Dad jokes with Dawson.
I got him all day.
All day. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Dominating with Dawson.
So, Ben,
Hey.
I have a question for you. I would like you to tell us all about weight transfer, like define it, the use of it, hazards, benefits. Talk about it.
It seems like some people think it's like the key to driving, and it's not apparent, at least early in your driving career, how important it is. I think.
Right. I understand that. I think at least when I first started driving, the line around the track was pretty much just kind of, here's where you put the car, here's where you want to be slowing down or getting faster. And the idea of kind of pitching the car back and forth, front and back, which is weight transfer, putting weight on the front, putting weight to one side or the other, or more weight to the rear. Those are what we're talking about when we talk about weight transfer. So that's something that as you become more advanced as a driver, you're sort of more tuned into chassis dynamics elements, things like weight transfer, and that's something that you're sort of thinking about. Not thinking about at the forefront of your mind, but it's something that you understand. Like, if I need to get more weight on the rear to fix this ill handling problem or something like that, you'll kind of know what to do about it. But it's a fairly advanced concept, but it's something that you sort of become more familiar with as you continue to drive and train as a high performance driver.
So I had an instance last weekend, when I was driving. And if you look at one of the turns I was in, the car started to understeer a little bit, meaning it was a left-hand turn and it started to push out to the right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So when I had somebody look at the video, they said what I should have done was just tap the brake just a little bit, not to slow the car down, but to get the car weighted so the front wheels had a little more grip. And then I just would have drove right around like I theoretically should have, as opposed to what I did. So in order to go through the turn faster, I needed to go momentarily slower and put some weight on the nose.
So you needed to transfer some weight from the rear, which had too much. So you had too much weight at the rear, so you didn't have very much good grip in the front. So to fix that, you needed to transfer or shift some weight to the front, which you can do by putting some brake pedal on. So typically,
or a lift, right?
Yeah, or lift. But yeah, typically when you decelerate, you're weighting the fronts, and as you accelerate, you're taking weight away from the front and putting weight on the rear as you accelerate, sort of playing up like a boat. It's my understanding. I'm also not a physics expert, but that's my understanding.
But you play one on the podcast, so
that's right. I try to pretend. But that's the idea: is that you're transferring weight back and forth, side to side, with the intent of aiding traction and getting the best grip that you can to be as fast as you can. So it's not something that you're thinking about inherently as an HPDE 1 or 2 driver or somebody who's driving your second limits race. But as you sharpen your skills, it's something that really comes into play, and it's sort of your focus as far as getting around a lap. You're thinking, how can I kind of transfer the weight, manage rotation, all that kind of ties together as you're conceptualizing the best lap you can put together.
So you're further along in your racing career, and you've got more years and more skill and more experience. But I guess the question to me is: are you thinking about the weight transfer, or are you relying on your understanding of how the car dynamics work to influence the weight transfer indirectly? Like, are you thinking like, I got to put a little more weight on my front right here? So, or you just
it's more automatic. For me, it's more automatic. For me, I'm just thinking like at that point, my mind has trained my body to understand like, all right, if I'm having this happen, I need to kind of do this. So some of the I guess frontline thought is taken out of it, and I'm just doing it as a mechanical reaction. Like I don't know if everybody does that, but at least for me, there is very little thinking happen when I'm on track. Like there's very little cerebral, like, inner dialogue happening when I'm driving. I'm usually just kind of just whipping it around and sort of trying to optimize. Yeah, it's a field thing, and I'm trying to optimize my speed, which definitely, weight transfer plays into it. Steering angle, when you timing your inputs, all that sort of thing plays into it. Hopefully teams up to give you your best lap you can. So, but at least as long as I've been doing it, I'm not thinking about like, okay, Ben, it's time to enter this brake zone, and let's start to apply some brakes and then ease off the brakes as we release the brakes. I'm not running a narrative in my head as I go along. But one of the things that I probably am thinking about, if I was going to say like I'm thinking about something right at the top of my mind, if something's not working, I would immediately be thinking, I needed to figure out how to manage this rotation and transfer this weight. And so it's weight transfer is a little bit of a high concept, but it's something that's at the forefront of your mind once you get more advanced. Say more, Jen.
So I've had the opportunity to drive several different cars. And
think of that as an awesome opportunity.
It is an awesome opportunity.
Yeah.
Yes. But I've noticed I'm able to feel it more in some cars than others. So I didn't know, is it like the size of the car? What?
Like which car more?
I'm trying to think.
Tell us a little more.
I can't remember exactly which cars because I've driven so many. But I certainly noticed in the Miata more.
The red Miata, the stock ND Miata.
So
probably the truck, right?
Yeah, the truck. Yeah, what is it about it that affects it the way you feel it?
Is it a little bit less in the BMW maybe?
No, I felt it in the BMW.
You felt it a little less?
Maybe a little less.
Did you?
But I felt it. But then, there was the Mustang and then the Capri and the
truck, the race
and
truck.
Maybe it was that I wasn't, when I drove some of those other cars, I just wasn't experienced enough to feel it. But certainly I feel it in the Miata a lot more because I've driven that in between pretty much most of the cars I've driven. But yeah, there's definitely a difference in depending on the vehicle. So I just didn't know what it was about the vehicle that made you be able to feel it more. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I know what you mean. I'm trying to think of examples from my own driving past. I mean, I've definitely driven cars that handle better than others, and something like a Miata is a great car for that. It has really I guess 50-50 front rear weight pretty much, right, from the factory. So that's a car that's set up already for you to have a very positive feel about everything happening at each corner feels pretty equal. So that's a great one. I would say if you're trying to race a Buick Roadmaster in a lemons race or something like that, you're going to have a much more slowed down feel for transfer and weight as you get ready for a corner. So I mean, I think one of the things that that people are feeling when they say, like, I really feel the weight transfer is maybe you feel how quickly or how readily a car transfers weight, how easily it rotates, versus one where you really got to kind of work for it and kind of try to yank some rotation out of a vehicle. Does that make sense?
Would it be the spring rate maybe, or because it's not the weight, because she feels it a lot in the Miata. So Miata's the lightest car she's driven, or it's not the weight by itself.
Right. I mean, I think one of the things about a Miata is it's got such a short wheelbase is another reason why you feel the weight transfer. Maybe it feels more apparent than it would in a longer car. I'm just guessing. Also, remember, Ben Dawson is a full-time dum-dum, so I'm just a Latin major who drives race cars. I'm just kind of talking about why I think it works. I'm sure you could have somebody who's much smarter than me talk about chassis dynamics, but these are just things that I understand about it.
So look forward to a better answer on your next episode of Driving with Dum Dum Dawson.
That's true.
The Miata, I probably have had more seat time in than maybe any of the other vehicles too. So
definitely more often.
Yeah. So, and that might just be it, just being used to that car.
I think part of it, you're getting better and you're starting to relax a little bit. Yeah. So by relax a little bit, you're getting a little more comfortable. So I would think that your vision's starting to relax a little bit. You're starting to see a little more. You're starting to be able to exhale and start to feel things more. So I think that's part of it.
Yeah.
But it is so important.
Also, you also could be getting used to all those sensory input, all your other inputs, and they're starting to become second nature. So now you're probably starting to focus on.
Yes. You're getting to where you're sort of raising up out of the just fight or flight track mode, where you're like, I'm just trying to keep this car on the track and keep it rolling. Where the more advanced you get, the more you have time to pay attention to nuance, like, hey, am I transferring the weight where I want to? Am I, in the exact right spot? Am I hitting this apex at the angle I want to? So yeah, that sort of thing just builds and builds. So that's a good sign that you're starting to notice weight transfer.
Yeah, and also the Miata is done at HPDs, and there really isn't all of that other sensory.
All the other cars.
Yeah, the other cars around. That's true.
What about you, Miss Vicky? You've been quiet on weight transfer.
I mostly feel it in the Miata.
Silver NB Miata.
Yes, because it feels a little bit like a go-kart, and you can feel pretty much everything in it anyway. But with that, since of all my HPDEs, especially since the last one, I have been actively trying to manipulate the weight transfers versus just letting the car do its thing as you're going through your racing in general, beginner racers. Now I'm just like, okay, now I want to make the car do this.
Ow.
Yeah, say more about that.
Whether I'm going into a turn, whether braking hard to shift all the weight towards the front.
Mm-hmm. That helps you traction for turn in, right? When if you get a bunch of weight on the front, it helps you have more traction to get the rotation to turn in.
Correct. Or, shifting the weight to the back, and I don't exactly know the instances unless I'm actually in the instances, but
think about Gingerman. You're going down the straightaway at the end of the
right,
and then you got
I'm full on.
You got the left hand first turn and a right hand second turn. What would you be doing there?
Well, for sure, as I'm going down the straightaway, I'm making sure that I stay on the brake long enough to make sure all my weight is shifted on the front end going into the turn, not stepping on the gas right away because I want all that front traction. So I'm trying to make sure the weight is where it needs to be going in for left to right. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
No, that's fine.
And then, step on the gas, of course, leaving the apex and then stepping on the gas just enough so I can get more of that front traction going on the next turn.
So no gas until at or after the apexes.
Right, because sometimes what you do is that you step on the gas in the middle of a turn, but then again, all that weight shifts too soon and you risk a spin out.
Or push.
Right, exactly. So actively, I'm trying to think of these things now because I'm getting more used to all the other inputs that are coming in. And those inputs, I don't have to worry about so much anymore. Yes.
So let's go back to January of this year. You're at Laguna Seca. You're in a
Yes.
front-wheel drive car, which is not your comfort zone.
No, it's not.
You go over turn 1, and then you get to the sharp left-hand turn, turn 2. What do you think happened there when you lost it a couple times? Because you and that turn did not seem to get along very well.
That's a tough turn for anybody.
It is. Right. I'm just trying to see if how she's doing,
right.
Trying to figure it out.
Yep.
So with that one, I would definitely shift the weight further to the front as I should have, and then kind of follow it through. But I would focus more on the second apex than I would the first.
Sure. But what about the back end? If you've got all the weight front, isn't that how you got yourself in trouble?
Are you referring to me being in a front wheel drive? Because I've only driven a front wheel drive like twice, so I don't even want to go into the debating of a front wheel drive. Now, if I was in a regular rear wheel drive vehicle, that's how I would approach it. But my training is not in a front wheel drive car, so getting used to that whole idea is not something I want to discuss at this moment. So I'm more comfortable.
So do you think of, this is to Vicky and Jen, do you think of this weight transfer as you're driving or after primarily? Like, is it something to think about afterwards on a turn you've been having trouble with, or is it something you think about actively while you're in the car?
I do it actively while I'm in it. I do it. What I do is I actually focus on it before I go into it.
That's cool.
Knowing what I have to do to the car now is what I'm doing is I plan for it. And then I evaluate how well that went after I've driven it.
You plan before the stint or before the turn?
Before the turn.
Okay.
Before I'm going into that turn, I make a plan on what I want that car to do. Now I'm doing it.
Okay.
And now and then I actively work it when I'm in it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I evaluate after the fact on how well that went and see if I need to make any further changes.
Okay. What about you, Miss Jen?
Vicky's a little bit further along with that than I am. I think of the last HPDE, I had started to actually focus and pay attention on it. I can't say I did in every turn, but I'm becoming more aware of it.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, there's 19 turns at Pittsburgh, so,
yeah,
that's a lot of turns.
a lot of turns. But yeah, I mean, it's certainly, it's something that they really focus on in HPD 1 anyway. They talk about it quite a lot. So it's just, and I know Vicky and I both have said, there's so much stimulus out there that, you're trying to pay attention to so many different things, and it's just one more thing. But like, now that some of the other stuff is becoming pretty routine,
Right.
I am starting to pay attention to it. And of course, Vicky is certainly better than I am, and a little further along, but you are, and she can focus on things a little bit more than me right now. But yeah, I mean, certainly I'm trying to.
Okay. I'm not even sure I'm doing what Vicky's doing. So, that's potentially good. I mean,
well, it's the only reason why I say that is also because it's almost like, for me, it's awakening. It's like a mini aha moment of an understanding that now I understand what I need to do. Now I just need to make it happen. And this only happened just recently from our last HPDE.
That's really cool. Yeah. I think understanding weight transfer as it plays into achieving the rotation you want with the car is really key to getting a lot faster. And so if you're actively pursuing it, like you are, Vicky, and saying like, all right, I want to try different approaches and different ways to attack, trying to make the car do what I want. That's a really good idea. And I think it's really good, especially at the stage you are in your development where, it's not as fast as it could be. So it's a great time to kind of play around and try different stuff where there's likely it can be less of a bad consequence. So that's really smart.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a great time to just try different stuff. Try driving offline when you get a little more comfortable with when you get more comfortable with all the blocking and tackling of driving, the braking, turning, shifting. When that stuff starts to feel more comfortable, you do have more headspace for more analytical pursuits. Like, am I transferring the weight the way I want to get the result I want? So it sounds like you're at leaving some of the more novice sort of things and getting to more intermediate pursuits of trying to think like, all right, how can I make the car do what I want? And that involves transferring the weight. I need more weight on the rear. Do I need more weight on the front? If it's not doing what I want, what can I do? Can I try coming off the throttle a little bit? Does that help me if I come off the throttle? Does it help me if I just dab the brakes? You're at a sort of place where you can start to play around with different cause and effect sort of things.
Right. I'm in the phase of my learning where I'm trying to knit it all together.
Yep.
Because now I understand all certain parts of it. It's all making sense now. And again, like you said, the sensory inputs that I'm receiving are starting to become second nature. So now I can start trying to knit all this other stuff together.
Yeah. The more you drive and the more you race, so much stuff becomes mechanical and leaves you time just to realize like, I am just out here to mess with people. That when you realize like I'm just out here just totally messing with people and playing head games, you have arrived at a really fun zone in your racing career.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, I think I'm still kind of, thinking about it more as I'm in it or after the fact. So Vicky's kind of like I'm going in thinking about it. I don't know that I'm there yet. So like I'm aware of it. It's just not at the right time, maybe.
No, I think it's great to be analytical after the fact if you can go back and apply that. I'm terrible at going back and thinking about anything that I've done, but if you're able to go back and think like, I think I could try this, especially if it's a DE setting where it's like, all right, second session of the day, I didn't like how it was doing here. So you've got a couple more shots at it least in that day to say, all right, I'm going to try a different approach and see what the result is. So it's smart to be analytical anytime you can apply it, whether it's going in or coming out, because there are plenty of people like me who are not good at that. And also, if you're think about this too. This is just something to sort of bring it back to newer racers who are listening. So Jen and Vicky are talking about a pretty advanced driving concept here, and they're into it in the early stages of HPDE training. There are a lot of racers who you're out there on track with in a lemons race or any kind of amateur endurance race who just went straight to racing without doing HPDEs. And so you're already kind of way up on them as conceptually and probably practice-wise than a lot of people who are out there in the racing field who just went straight to racing. So, and that's still the case. I know this was more prevalent, 5-10 years ago, but there's still plenty of people and teams who go out there and just start racing before they've done much DE training. So you're already pretty advanced talking about weight transfer compared to some of your amateur endurance racing compadres.
Why, thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Ben.
Who knew?
Thanks, Ben, for the little confidence boost, the little fluff underneath my wings.
I'm a fluffer. What can I say? Great fluffer. Edit that out.
I don't think
Oh, no.
We're keeping that one.
Yeah, all right.
Ben likes spreadable marshmallow topping. That's what we're going with. Thanks, Ben.